Washington reviews its involvement in Israeli-Palestinian peace talks, both sides step up the blame game, but efforts on the ground to save the talks continue. Hungarians go to the polls 4 years after the shocking results that made the far-right Jobbik party the third largest in the country. According to latest polls, the party is still holding its ground. A race against the clock as search teams track sounds detected in the southern Indian Ocean, hoping they lead to the black box of Flight 370.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening. The search for a formula that will bring the Israeli-Palestinian peace process back from the brink continues. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister blamed the Palestinian UN move for the impasse and threatened that Israel may retaliate with unilateral actions of its own. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev reports the latest developments.
It ain't over till it's over. All signs show that Israeli-Palestinian peace talks are on the brink of collapse. But the U.S. Special Envoy and both sides are continuing intensive efforts to make it work. Looking on the bright side, the sides haven't abandoned the negotiating table yet. But on the other hand, the signs of escalation are already here.
The Palestinian unilateral steps will be answered with unilateral steps by us. We are willing to continue talks, but not at any price.
The Israeli Prime Minister broke his 2-week silence at the weekly cabinet meeting, following a week of tit-for-tat moves by both sides. The U.S. was hoping to achieve a package deal that will extend talks, but that fell apart, and both sides are pointing a finger at each other. Jerusalem blames Ramallah for breaching promises when unilaterally signing 15 international treaty applications. The Palestinians say Israel reneged on its own commitments by failing to release the fourth and final batch of prisoners last weekend.
The Israelis, as usual, did not implement what they committed themselves to.
We are in a real crisis in the peace talks, and we need to see how to resolve it.
Meanwhile, Washington is considering the possibility of abandoning the efforts altogether. After a year of intensive shuttle diplomacy, even U.S. Secretary of State is getting ready for a reality check.
There are limits to the amount of time and effort that the United States can spend if the parties themselves are unwilling to take constructive steps in order to be able to move forward. We're not going to sit there indefinitely.
Kerry will meet the U.S. president Monday to reevaluate America's future involvement in the talks, as calls to review the peace push enhance. In light of the lack of Israeli-Palestinian willingness to make tough decisions, the White House may well decide to raise a white flag.
And joining me right now outside of the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem is I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good evening, Tal. So, Tal, what is the latest?
Well, good evening, Lucy. In the past week, the lights here in the Prime Minister's office have been on very late. The Israeli Prime Minister has been having frantic late-night meetings with officials and advisors discussing the crisis. And this morning, he tells his fellow Likud ministers that the crisis is bad and that the upcoming hours are crucial. So we're still waiting to get a word from the trilateral meeting that is convened this evening between the U.S. Special Envoy Martin Indyk and the chief negotiators, Saib Arikat and Tzipi Livni. It's the second time that Indyk is trying to convene a trilateral meeting. The last one on Wednesday evening was reportedly a catastrophe and got even into shouts and accusations. But the U.S. is still hoping that the last-minute effort will be able to save this crisis before Kerry and Obama's meeting tomorrow. But meanwhile, there is some kind of political unrest inside the Israeli political system. The Knesset, the Israeli parliament, will convene tomorrow for a special plenary session to discuss the crisis in the peace talks. And the Israeli foreign minister, Avigdor Lieberman, drops a bomb a few hours ago in a conference in New York when he says that he won't support a package deal that will release terrorists and that he prefers to go to further elections.
So, Tal, what does Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu means when he says unilateral steps?
Well, Israel has been threatening, asking the Palestinians to withdraw their international applications, but as long as they're not doing it, they've already started to implement sanctions on the Palestinians, on the Palestinian Authority. At this moment, there are 3 sanctions being implemented. One is limiting any bilateral contact. The second one is reducing the cellular development activity in the West Bank. And the third one is freezing construction development and agricultural development in Area C.
Yes, Tal Shalev, outside of the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem. Thank you very much for this. And with me now from Ramallah on the phone is Ghassan Abdallah, researcher and political analyst. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Mr. Ghassan Abdallah, what does the Palestinian gain from the fact that Israel has the power? You are deciding to step back and basically losing this game.
I don't think that you are totally right by saying that the Palestinians decided to sit back. I think the best is, according to my personal beliefs, is that there is no value to keep blaming each other. The focus, I think, should be on finding an outlet for how to rescue the negotiation process. And personally, I believe that this can be only through complying to all signed agreements by both sides.
But how can you reach an agreement when the Palestinians decided for unilateral steps of their own?
It's not a Palestinian decision. This is something that has been agreed upon months ago. What the Palestinians agreed and signed is not to go to the 63 international commissions and organizations. The Palestinians only signed to go to 15. This is number one. Number two, the Israeli government is the one who broke the promise by not releasing the 30 Palestinian prisoners that the United States, Israel, and PA agreed that they should be released as a fourth stage on the 29th of March.
Yes, Ghassan Abdallah, thank you Ghassan Abdallah, thank you very much for this. Unfortunately, we don't hear you very good. We will try to fix the line and then get back to you. And we're moving to Egypt. Egypt today marked the 6th anniversary of the establishment of the April 6th youth movement, with protests around the country. In the meantime, the country is still occupied with the ongoing trials of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders and sparks of violence in the region. I-24 News reporter Uli Shapiro has more.
Egypt is marking the 6th anniversary of the general strike that shook the country and formed the famous April 6th youth movement, a key player in the 2011 Cairo uprising that ousted former President Hosni Mubarak and sparked political unrest that continues until today. After 2 revolutions that utterly changed the political map in Egypt, the country is still torn between religious and secular, and between democracy and dictatorship, or even anarchy. 2 major trials were expected to reconvene in Egypt this week: the ongoing trial of former President Mohamed Morsi and the trial of the Supreme Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohamed Bedi, that opened last week.
It is inconceivable in this day and age that a tyrant civil president would be replaced by a tyrant military president. This is something that is being prepared for Sisi once again. Never, 1,000 times over, never will this be accepted by the free Egyptian people.
Bedi was charged with inciting violence in protests that ended in the death of 50 protesters. Last month, an Egyptian court sentenced 529 Brotherhood members to death. Now Bedi, along with other 49 officials, could face the same sentence. In the meantime, police are still investigating tribal clashes in the Aswan district that left 23 dead over the weekend. The Egyptian army intervened to stop the fighting between 2 families. Many regard the visit of Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the leading candidate for Egypt's presidency in the region, a few days ago, as a main trigger of the eruption. As all eyes are pointed towards May 26th, the set date for general elections, it seemed that so many years after the youth movement took hold, Egypt is still far from finding common ground.
And still on the subject, the Muslim Brotherhood warned today that Prime Minister David Cameron's decision to investigate the group's activities in the United Kingdom could invite terrorist attacks against civilians. Speaking to the Sunday Times, Ibrahim Munir, the Brotherhood's most senior official in the UK, said that any ban on the group as a terrorist group would open the doors to all options, including violence. Hungary went to the polls today in its general elections. Current Prime Minister Viktor Orban from the right-wing Fidesz party is expected to win again. But many eyes are turned to the rise of the far-right nationalist party Jobbik, which may become a key figure in Orban's next coalition. I24 News reporter Uli Shapira has the story.
Hungary's far right is on the rise, 4 years after the election that shook Europe. The country is going to the polls Sunday, and although Prime Minister Viktor Orban is most likely to be re-elected, the question is how much power he will have in parliament and whether he will form a coalition with the Jobbik party, an extreme right-wing party expected to increase its power.
Higher turnout would allow stronger governing. It really matters how big the majority is on which the parliamentary majority is formed. So I hope many voters will go to cast their votes, and whatever government is formed, it can start working with strong public support and background.
Just like the far-right Greek party, the Golden Dawn, Jobbik took advantage of the poor economy and high unemployment rate in Hungary to boost its popularity. The party's members are known for their extreme nationalist agenda, mainly targeting minorities. In 2012, for example, the party's deputy leader Maton Gyöngyösi asked the government for a list of Jews claimed to be a national security risk to the country. Now, once again, the party's leaders see a bright future.
I think that we have chances to win elections in Hungary. The past has shown that Jobbik has been always underestimated by public opinion polls.
When the election passes, the next Hungarian prime minister will have to answer some difficult questions about nationality, racism, and protecting human rights in the country.
And joining me right now from Germany is German-Hungarian journalist Fanny Facsar, who covers Hungarian politics. Good evening.
Good evening.
So in the next 4 years of Viktor Orban, what can we expect from his policies?
Well, the question, first of all, is if he's going to win the elections, because the exit polls are not in yet. So we would have to wait for that to actually say, yes, he got the second term and this is his plan, this is what he's going to do. But oddly enough, he didn't really have a huge program to start with for this election, because you could say he's quite self-confident, or rather his party, the center-right Fidesz, the governing Fidesz party, is quite self-confident that they are going to win, be it with a two-third majority, as they did in 2010, or with a solid majority to govern. What their plans are, well, probably they're going to try to decrease the taxes and go with very popular measurements, just like they did thus far, to cater to their voters. And that is, for example, like cutting the utility prices, raising a few salaries. The bigger question, however, is how he is going to align with Russia, that he's really catering to, or with the European Union that has resulted in an avalanche of criticism for the past 4 years. So how he's going to deal with the European Union within the next 4 years, and whether he's actually going to turn more towards Russia, as he has shown during the past year.
Yes, Fanny, has the Hungarian government taken any steps against the anti-Semitic incidents provoked by the Jobbik party?
Well, you could say that definitely steps have been taken as of what is, let's say, to some sort of necessary on a diplomatic level. However, of course, there's a lot of criticism also on the EU level that this is not enough. If you take into consideration that, for example, at the Hungarian parliament, one of the members of the far-right Jobbik party has suggested, it was in 2012, that there should be a list of people who are Jewish, because they should be checked for security reasons. instance. So if you say that, if you can consider that this is still possible in Hungary among as many other measures that are taken by the far-right Jobbik party, you would say no, it's not enough what the government so far does. On the other hand, the center-right party, the Fidesz, also maybe doesn't want to do too much because in a way the Fidesz party also doesn't want to lose their voters to the far-right Jobbik. So they're trying to put them into line, but not too much in order to not lose voters on their side.
Yes, Fanny Fachar, thank you very much for this. We're moving on. New images today from the aftermath of rioting in Jordan's Zaatari refugee camp. On Saturday, hundreds of Syrian refugees living there clashed with Jordanian security forces, leaving one person dead. Residents describe anti-riot police using tear gas to disperse refugees who threw stones and set fire to offices and caravans. Several different versions about what sparked the riot, all pointing to high tension between refugees and police. And now let's see what is happening inside Israel. And joining me tonight is Charles Biblizer for a look inside Israel. Good evening.
Hi, Lucy.
So last night, an Arab woman became the latest in a growing line of minorities to win popular Israeli competitions. Nof Atam Ismail has pledged to use her celebrity to forge common bonds between Israel's diverse peoples. Here's more.
She is not your typical cook. But on Saturday, Nof Athamna Ishmael was crowned Master Chef, victor of the 4th season of Israel's reality cooking show.
I was so excited. I started crying. It was, I think, one of the most exciting moments of my life.
A mother of 3, the 32-year-old is a doctor of microbiology. Athamna Ishmael is also an Israeli Arab, the latest member of a minority group in Israel to win such a competition. The trend has people asking, can reality TV bridge the gaps between Israel's diverse and sometimes opposing populations? This past January, Israel was taken by storm by Rose Fostanes, a middle-aged Filipina caregiver who won the inaugural X Factor talent show. Fostanes followed in the footsteps of teenager Lina Mahul, a Christian Arab who won last season's The Voice. And this past August, Ethiopian-born Tachunya Rubel was named winner of the 5th season of Israel's Big Brother. But perhaps the country's most famous minority figure is Yityish Ainau, who in 2013 became the first woman of African descent crowned Miss Israel. Her story made headlines throughout the world and garnered her a dinner invitation from U.S. President Barack Obama. Athamna Ishmael is thus in good company. She plans to use her newfound stardom to open an Arab-Jewish cooking school.
When you see people eating, they're always happy, and it brings a very good atmosphere and makes very good interactions between people. This is why I think that this kind of school, of Arabic Jewish school of culinary studies, might have a really good potential of bringing some kind of a mini piece.
I don't know if color is the right word to say, but this is a new color of the Israeli television.
It is. It's certainly a growing trend,
yes.
But it's very important to just put it out there. There are those who will try and convince you that Israel is some kind of utopia because minorities win reality television shows.
Which is not.
It is not. Israel, like every country, suffers from racism. And it tries to tackle it as every good democracy does. This being said, what this trend does show is that racism is not institutionalized in Israel, as many of its detractors try and convince people. Israel is not an apartheid regime. Israel is not Nazi Germany, and this is evidence to that. So, like I said, Israel does try and tackle the problems that it has. And they are many, including racism.
So let's see what the people have to say about that.
First of all, it's news for me that she's Arab. I didn't know, and I've seen several episodes. Good for her. She prepared beautiful meals.
They received the same opportunities. They're equals, and it's the same country for all of us.
If they won in beauty pageants and in many more places such as reality shows, then good for them, and they should keep it up.
I think they're part of the country like any Jewish person, and it's great they get the same opportunities as ourselves on TV.
I see how much they appear on shows, both Arabs and Jews, and there's no discrimination.
Should I say thank God for Israeli television?
Building bridges, perhaps. One
Charles
reality show at a
Biblitz.
time.
Charles Biblitz, thank you very much for this. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes break, and then we will be back with your comments on the Daily Question. Don't go anywhere. As Washington reviews its involvement in Israeli-Palestinian peace talks, both sides step up the blame game, but efforts on the ground to save the talks continue. Hungarians go to the polls 4 years after the shocking results that made the far-right UBIC party the third largest in the country. According to the latest polls, the party is still holding its ground. A race against the clock as search teams track sounds detected in the southern Indian Ocean, hoping they lead to the black box of Flight 370. Tomorrow, April 7th, marks 20 years since the Rwandan genocide commemoration have begun, and along with them, controversy. Rwanda's president and foreign minister have come out blaming France and Belgium for having a direct role in the mass killing. Today, on the Daily Question, we look at Rwanda and we ask you, should the international community bear responsibility for genocides? And joining me, like every night, is I24 News editor Nureed Zanger. Good evening. And tonight also, international analyst Gian Maria Venzoli. Good evening. Good to have you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
We will get back to you in a few minutes, 2 minutes. But before that, let's see the poll.
Let's start with the poll then. As you said, there's a lot of division still about this subject. In the last few days, we saw that the Rwandan government holds the international community very responsible, France and Belgium in particular. So it's very raw 20 years later. Let's look at what people had to say. A whopping 82% said yes, the international community does bear responsibility. 13% said no. And while this is, I think, a lot of times the obvious response for people, we do have to take responsibility. I think our viewers responded with a lot of nuance that's important to note. So let's start right off in the Ivory Coast with Adu Abel, who spoke also. Technology, yes. who spoke about the limited powers of the international community. He says yes and no. Yes, the international community ensure people by UN soldiers, but when the situation becomes worse, instead of reinforcing the number of soldiers, they leave refugee camps and deliver the refugees to the killers. This is a point that is brought up again and again in conflicts around the world.
Definitely.
UN peacekeepers are there, then they leave, and conflict runs wild. Another person who kind of brought up on a positive side the limited powers, but still the powers of the international community was Edward in London. He says if it weren't for international pressure on the Hutu, there would have been no ceasefire in 1993. So again, maybe the international community can't bear all the responsibility, but they do have important roles, whether it's in initiating a ceasefire.
Let's ask our analyst Gian Maria Venzoli. Good evening again.
Thank you. Good evening.
So, Gian Maria, of course, it's obvious that after the World War II, we know that we're always saying never to forget what happened there and that the international community should take responsibility. But it seems that if we're looking just across the corner, just seeing what is happening in Syria, it doesn't happen.
Sure. Unfortunately, that's always happened, that the international community reacts on time when like civil wars or genocide break out. And probably the international community must have a rapid reaction mechanism that has to act in a shorter period of time than what has been happening in the last 60 years, 50 years, and after the Second World War. And what everybody recognizes when we talk about the international community is that there may be the bureaucracy and political issues make the international community to act too late, sometimes too little, too late. We need to be more careful. We need to be able to monitor which are the minorities at risk, and to have to be ready when time comes to have this strong, rapid reaction mechanism in place.
But how come, Gian Maria, that the international community is more aware about what is happening around the world, is still keeping silence?
That's a very good point. Unfortunately, there is a difference between making like proper decision and acting on the decision that are made. My point of view, the international community has been making so many progress since the 90s, since what happened in Rwanda. But unfortunately, we see every day that sometimes, even in the international community, the United Nations, there are different points of view in terms of acting or non-acting, for example, as you mentioned in Syria. So unless the international community come out with one single strong voice, you cannot take any action, because otherwise it's going to be not an international part.
Definitely. Yes, Gian-Maria Avanzoli, thank you very much for this.
A very important point. Just yesterday, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was in the Central African Republic saying the world must pay attention to what's happening there. Some of our viewers noted that too. But as Gian-Maria said, there's a huge difference between saying pay attention, there's a massacre happening,
and actually doing something on the ground. Definitely. Let's hear more about from our viewers.
Let's take a look at the people who are in the minority, who actually kind of point a finger at the African countries, or at whichever country it may be where the genocide or the massacre is happening. B. Joseph in Nairobi said the international community causes more problems than it solves. I think the bureaucracy may be part of this. Yes. There is no hope to change the backwards ways of entire societies. The unfortunate truth is that if they want to kill each other, there is nothing we can do about it. So this is a clear... On the cynical end, that you can't come in. He has his particular views on it, but the democracy conversation also, you can't necessarily come in and change something entirely.
Yeah, but you know, if the world would just stand aside and will say, everybody will just look inside their homes and will say, oh, I don't care about what is happening because they're killing each other, the world would look a big mess. Yes,
absolutely.
Not that it doesn't, but okay.
Let's go to Michael, who kind of follows in the same thought. Africa is quite good at tearing itself apart because of religion and tribalism, but it will always be portrayed as the West's failure. These countries have been independent for decades but haven't progressed. But other viewers who we may not have time to get to did go back to actually the colonialism aspect, and let's find one of them. Where is she? I can't find her now, but one of our viewers mentioned that there's this colonial aspect, that these countries come in and decades later there are still the problems, they're still reaping the disaster.
I think that it's Renee that says it's a shame that the international community hasn't recognized its responsibility for 3 years of genocide without real intervention. They have done too little, too late. Which is unfortunately...
A lot of our viewers brought up CAR, they brought up Syria. What is everybody doing now? And absolutely, like Gian-Maria said, you have to at least recognize it and then take steps.
The last sentence is that we are always seeing things too little, too late. This is the most worrying thing. And Nuri Zanger, of course, you will be here tomorrow with another question. Thank you very much for this. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes break. And then we will be back for the rest of our edition, The News Today. Don't go anywhere. 2 minutes and I'll be back. As Washington reviews its involvement in Israeli-Palestinian peace talks, both sides step up the blame game, but efforts on the ground to save the talks continue. Hungarians go to the polls 4 years after the shocking results that made the far-right UBAK party the third largest in the country. According to the latest polls, the party is still holding its ground. A race against the clock as search teams track sounds detected in the southern Indian Ocean, hoping they lead to the black box of Flight 370. Welcome back again. Saturday's election in Afghanistan went forth with at least one very positive sign, a high voter turnout. I-24 News reporter Roni Ben-Bassad brings us all the details from the country's first democratic transfer of power.
A day after Afghans took to the polls to elect their new president, the country's first ever democratic transfer of power is being dubbed a major achievement, both by the international community and by Afghan officials.
Despite the cold and rainy weather and possible terrorist attacks, our sisters and brothers nationwide embrace this election, and the participation is a step forward, and it is a success for Afghanistan.
This was the first time Afghans have voted since 2009. Then the election was marred by fraud and low voter turnout. This time it was higher than expected. Out of the 12 million eligible voters in the country, more than 7 million citizens took part in the election, and 1/3 of them were women.
Today is a historic day for Afghanistan. It is a day that men and women come together to choose their destiny.
The election marked the biggest military operation since the fall of the Taliban in 2001. All 400,000 of Afghanistan's policemen and soldiers were on duty for the day to prevent expected attacks by Taliban members. But while the group failed to disrupt the vote itself, a policeman and 2 election commission employees were killed when a roadside bomb struck their vehicle in the north of the country on Sunday. As the votes are being counted, 8 candidates are waiting to see which one will succeed the country's current president, Hamid Karzai, who spent almost 10 years in office. And while all 3 frontrunners expressed confidence they could win, they have promised to respect the results, assuming they are credible. If no one secures a clear majority of over 50%, a second runoff between the 2 top candidates will be scheduled for May 28th, possibly raising security concerns all over again.
And joining me now on set is retired Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of British forces in Afghanistan. Good to have you back again in our studios. So we just heard in the report, assuming the elections are credible, should we expect a credible election?
I think we should. There have been problems with it, among which were that about 10%, I believe, of the polling stations were not able to open due to security problems. Also, there were, I believe, shortages of ballot papers. There will certainly have been some voter intimidation and other forms of attempting to influence the vote illegally. But I think overall we can probably expect that those people who are assessing it independently will judge that the election was run as fairly as it could be expected in the circumstances.
We can say that it's a success, basically.
I think it will have been a success. There is a very high turnout compared to what you might expect, given the huge problems over intimidation that the Taliban have attempted to induce into this election.
So where should we see the Taliban in these elections?
The Taliban are vehemently opposed to any form of election, including these elections, and they made that abundantly clear in the run-up to the elections when they brought about what some people have described as far greater violence and has been seen across the country since the Taliban were ruling the place. And as you know, there's been a lot of violence, very severe violence in Afghanistan since then, so very, very tough. They've attempted to prevent the elections happening or to disrupt them. And they have been successful, but only to a very, very limited degree. There've been a relatively few security incidents because there's been a massive, massive security presence of about 400,000 Afghan troops deployed.
So if we're seeing that the elections are a success, what is the current position of the Taliban in Afghanistan?
Well, I think the Taliban do not and will not enjoy popular support among the people of Afghanistan. There will be some who support them, but the way they will exert themselves, and I've no doubt they will do so as soon as they possibly can after these elections, and indeed once Western forces begin to withdraw even more than they have already, is to attempt to exert themselves with violence by killing as many people as they possibly can, taking control of large parts of Afghanistan, killing leaders, killing people who support them. That's the way the Taliban operate. They don't work through the ballot box.
So if we're looking at the next president of Afghanistan, should we expect from him to get closer to the West?
I think we need a president in Afghanistan who is going to come up with a sensible solution to the issue that's been causing massive problems in the last few months, which is the status of US in particular, but other Western forces as well, in Afghanistan after 2014. The Americans wish to keep forces there, the British wish to keep some forces there, other countries the same, but relatively limited compared to what they've had before. President Karzai have been very reluctant to come to any kind of agreement with them. I think the next president will have to do so, and is likely to do so. Pretty much everything in Afghanistan depends over the next few years on having continued Western support.
It's definitely going to be very interesting days in Afghanistan. Colonel Richard Kemp, it's a great pleasure to have you back again in our studio.
Thank you.
Said Nafa, a former Israeli member of parliament of the Ba'ath Party, was convicted today in court of contacting a foreign agent. In 2007 in Syria, Nafa met with the Deputy Secretary General Talal Naji of the Popular Liberation Front for Palestine, now defined as a terror group. Nafa was found innocent of a separate charge of meeting or trying to meet with Hamas leader Khalid Mash'al. The former parliament member denied the allegations and slammed the indictment against him as outrageous discrimination. And now let's look at economy. Computerized trading has become the center of controversy lately, with U.S. regulators now taking a closer look at what some say is the latest scandal on Wall Street. I-24 News anchor Natalie Ehrlich investigates.
Emotion, greed, arrogance. Imagine you could take the sin out of investing. Well, perhaps you can with the help of a machine.
A lot of times when people trade, they let their emotions and feelings get in the way. It might be a good idea sometimes, but usually not. And the computer doesn't do that. I mean, it has its rules and it only trades according to them.
Welcome to the world of algo trading. Instead of relying on a market trader, or even worse, the caricatures depicted in Hollywood films, in some cases, you can remove human intervention altogether. A pre-programmed algorithm decides what stocks to buy and what to sell. It's unfazed by market swings because, after all, it's based on math. A growing number of hedge funds, investment banks, and pension funds are turning to automated trading, as it's also called. We got the chance to sit down with I Know First, a financial startup that has innovated a self-learning algorithm based on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Dr. Lipa Reutman, a PhD in chemistry from the Weizmann Institute, with 20 years of experience working in artificial intelligence, says the mathematical model that describes chaotic chemical processes found in nature is similar to the model of financial markets. He's so convinced of the similarity, he even created an algorithm that incorporates aspects of genetics.
It's used for very difficult processes where the exact rules are not known and even probably not existent. But it allows us to come up with pretty good approximation of what happens next in the market.
The algorithm offers 1,400 predictions per day for 6 time frames for the short, medium, and long term by identifying waves in the stock market to forecast its trajectory.
Our return in 2013 was 60% versus the 29% of the S&P 500. We were beating the S&P by 31%.
But algo trading is competitive. As it becomes more common, it's even harder to make a profit using it, cautions Yair Koren, an algo trader in a hedge fund which partners with Harel Insurance in Tel Aviv.
The rapid growth of automated trading, as well as several cases of algorithms gone wild, have caught the attention of market regulators across the globe.
The fear is that an excessive number of computer-generated orders in a short time could cause violent market volatility. The 2010 flash crash, in which the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged about 1,000 points only to recover those losses within minutes, was largely attributed to a type of algorithmic trading known as high-frequency trading. There's also a concern of lack of transparency, which gives traders an advantage over retail investors. Still, some algo traders like Yair Koren are not so sure the flash crash is a result of algorithmic trading.
Algorithmic traders usually add volume to the markets. And when you add volume, you make the spread lower. You make the difference between buy and sell prices lower because there are a lot of players, a lot of people who want to buy and sell. So I look at it as a good thing.
And with me now to look at the latest news and controversy in algo trading is I-24 News' Natalie Ehrlich. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, explain to me, why is high-frequency trading back in the headlines?
Absolutely. So Michael Lewis, a widely respected business author in the United States, is out with a new book, and in the past he's also taken a critical stance on Wall Street. It's called Flash Boys, and in it he says that the U.S. stock market is rigged against average retail investors, people like you and me, who may choose to put our money into the stock market to make a personal investment.
So why is it such a big deal right now in Wall Street?
Absolutely. I mean, it's actually been a huge issue for many years now. A number of regulators have been looking at it very critically, as we saw Ted Kaufman, who I spoke to in the piece. They've been saying that this is a form of insider trading, and in light of this piece that Michael Lewis has now brought to the forefront of public attention,
yes,
it's gaining a lot of attention. And I mean, it just really has been such a huge issue ever since the flash crash of 2010, which is largely attributed to this form of trading. What they're basically saying is, or what people who are against this believe, is that these traders are able to use algorithms and make trades so fast ahead of other people like you and me that they're gaining an unfair competitive advantage. And to their credit, in their defense, they say that they're adding liquidity to the market and therefore equalizing prices.
So what's the latest on the regulatory front?
Absolutely. So in this, on this basically, this new public attention that we've seen in light of this book, the FBI has disclosed that they've actually been investigating this for the last year. And now Eric Holder, Attorney General, part of the DOJ, is also revealing that they are also investigating to see whether this truly is a form of insider trading.
Natalie Ehrlich, thank you very much for this. We're moving to the missing flight. The hunt for missing Malaysian Flight 370 produced new leads over the weekend as search vessels picked up underwater ping signals from what could be the plane's black box. But time is pressing, and at this point, every hour is crucial. I-24 News reporter Roni Benbassat with all the latest information.
A new hope in the hunt for Flight MH370. Chinese and Australian ships have picked up a number of possible signals from the plane's black box, just as the search for the missing Malaysian aircraft enters a crucial point in time.
The main problem is the battery of the underwater locator beacon of the black box may run out after April 6th, which could pose more difficulties in finding it.
The Chinese patrol ship Haitian 1 detected one ping signal on Friday and then another one on Saturday. Both are only 2 kilometers apart. The Australian vessel Ocean Shield also reported picking up an acoustic noise on Sunday in another part of the search area.
This is an important and encouraging lead, but one which I urge you to continue to treat carefully.
More planes and ships are headed to the area to assist with the hunt, including the British Navy vessel HMS Echo, which is expected to arrive early on Monday with advanced detection equipment. But while the signals are consistent with the electronic pulse produced by flight data recorders, any connection between them and Flight 370 are yet to be confirmed. And after so many false hopes, this time authorities are being extra cautious.
Speculation and unconfirmed reports can see the loved ones of the passengers put through terrible stress.
It's been almost a month since the flight's mysterious disappearance. And to this day, no physical leads on the plane's whereabouts have been found. These new signals could be the first concrete evidence to provide some answers for relatives of the passengers and for those watching around the world.
It's good news. I hope it will be confirmed and they manage to find the black box quickly, so we will know the truth.
It will take a few more days for these new leads to develop. But today's question is, can they locate the source of these signals? And if so, can they do it in time?
U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, on an official visit to Japan, said today that the United States will deploy 2 additional destroyers equipped with missile defense systems to Japan by 2017, a direct response to North Korean missile launches that have alarmed the region. Tensions have been building between North Korea and its neighbors since Pyongyang fired 2 long-range missiles on March 26. And moving to Africa, Mali's government has resigned and Minister Moussa Mara has been named the next prime minister. The country's outgoing prime minister submitted the entire government's resignation to President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta yesterday, and according to an official statement, it has been accepted. And now, let's move to culture. And joining me to take a look at culture is I-24 News culture correspondent Shachar Peled with some really, really sad news.
Setting, yes.
I cannot believe that. Please tell our viewers.
Well, David Letterman, the David Letterman, is resigning. This was unfortunately expected back in 2013 when he renewed his contract for only 2 more years. People knew this was coming, and following the footsteps of Jay Leno, after more than 20 years as host in CBS, he has announced he is resigning as the host of The Late Show.
So who's next? Jon Stewart?
Well, we'll get to that, but first of all, we must say that only recently he surpassed Johnny Carson as the longest-running host in late-night American TV history, more than 31 years in a row, and Americans love their TV history, including their president, Barack Obama. He was 7 times, actually, in Letterman's show, twice as president, and he tweeted, he said, there are more than 10 reasons David Letterman will be missed, a reference, of course, to the top 10 famous list of Letterman, and the big race now begins. There are many bets. It could be Conan, it could be Stewart, it could be Jimmy Kimmel. There are those who consider even Whoopi Goldberg or Jerry Seinfeld. So it's going to be a very interesting race. Anyway, maybe.
You know, who knows?
Anyway, we've got time. He's only retiring in 2015, so they have enough time to choose a candidate. Any one of us can try.
And we have enough time to do rehearsals on Late Night Show.
Yes, and from one who's retiring, we're moving to someone who, it seems like he'll never retire. It's the 20th anniversary of the death of Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
A big deal for his fans, for the Nirvana Icons fans every year, but this time it's 20 years, and his widow, Courtney Love, released that she's considering a Broadway musical to depict his life, his music, and his legacy. Kurt Cobain, the musical, will it happen? Anyway, she's looking for an A-list team of writers, producers, directors to come aboard. So if anyone wants to join the musical on Kurt Cobain, please give her a call.
Musical on Kurt Cobain?
Yes, there have been past attempts of biopics and documentaries, and the 2005 Gus Van Sant film Last Days, trying to tell his story, but it will remain a big secret, a big conspiracy throughout the years. Only last month, the Seattle police has reopened his case. They released new photos of the death scene. Well, we know officially it was ruled as a suicide, but there are those who will say otherwise, and they found nothing in the files.
I don't know if Kurt Cobain, if he was alive, he would appreciate the fact that somebody's trying to do a musical on his life.
Perhaps, we'll never know, but those who love him will like to see his legacy going on in any form, I'm guessing.
Because when I hear musical, I hear Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia with Kurt Cobain, it doesn't go.
He was back in 1994. He was the biggest rock star of his time. Dead at 27. He's become a legend. But once again, I think his fans of the icon of Nirvana will want to see him in any form: musical, book, graphic novel, comic, whatever.
We would like to see him alive, but
yes,
unfortunately, it doesn't happen. It won't happen. Okay. Well, Shahal Pellet, thank you very much for this. But we're staying with you. The first ever baby from a gay family was baptized Saturday in the Roman Catholic Cathedral of Córdoba, Argentina. I-24 News correspondent Shahal Pellet has more on the progress towards recognition of the LGBT community families.
Meet the proud parents. A lesbian couple from Argentina asked that the church baptize their baby girl, Uma Azul, and were pleasantly surprised to be the first ever to have their request granted in the socially conservative country.
This sets a precedent. Uma is the first baby of a lesbian couple to be baptized and accepted by the Catholic Church. Imagine how meaningful this is. It opens many doors and it sends a message to everyone.
The couple was equally astonished when Argentine President Cristina Fernandez accepted their request over Facebook to be the godmother, and are now set for the next challenge.
Now we want more. Aside from the baptism of our daughter, we want marriage for us too by church. We hope it is possible.
Although 75% of its population is Roman Catholic, Argentina was the first Latin American state to let gay couples marry in civil ceremonies and adopt children. The change was led by President Fernandez, who signed the legislation into law in July 2010, but has also received surprising support from none other than the Vatican. Argentine-born Pope Francis opposed same-sex marriage when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, but since assuming the papacy in March 2013, has proposed loosening the conservative Catholic tradition that prohibits baptizing children conceived outside of marriage between a man and a woman. This unprecedented embrace of religion is indeed one more step towards the gay community's equality worldwide.
Now we're going for a run. I'm going to take with me to this run the host of the I-24 News Sports Magazine, Jonathan Regev. Good evening.
I hope I win.
You will surely win.
Good evening, Lucy.
Good evening. So we're starting with a race.
Yeah, Formula One.
Not ours.
Not ours. They'll surely beat us.
Yes.
Formula One just ended. If we thought the third race of the season, and if we thought before the season in Bahrain, this is the season of Mercedes. Now it's a clear exclamation point. This is 2014 is the year for Mercedes. Third race of the season, third win for Mercedes. This time, Lewis Hamilton first, Nico Rosberg second. They're two drivers, same result as in Malaysia in the previous run. And the first race of the season in Australia, that was won by Rosberg. So 3 races, 3 wins for Mercedes, and they are very, very strong. Sebastian Vettel, remember that name? We said it so many times here in the studio last year. Nowhere to be seen, only 6th in the overall standings. Rosberg, Hamilton, Mercedes, they're the people to look for this year in Formula 1.
From here, we're moving to the Davis Cup and Switzerland.
Switzerland won against Kazakhstan. This happened just 10 minutes ago. Switzerland won the tie against Kazakhstan, but it was very, very difficult. Everyone thought Switzerland would cruise to the semifinals because for the first time in many, many years, Stanislas Wawrinka and Roger Federer together paired up. These two giant players paired up to play for Switzerland in a good year. Wawrinka, let's remember, the Australian Open champion.
Yeah.
Federer back to his good form in 2014, but it was very difficult. They were down 2-1 after the second day, but Wawrinka and Federer both stepped up. Both won their games today, and Switzerland is through to the semifinals together with the Czech Republic, Italy, and France. Very, very interesting to see.
And we're moving for a group that is not really eager to win.
Bayern Munich. Now they lost the first game in the Germany in the Bundesliga for 53 games. The last time they lost a game in Germany was October 2012, a year and a half ago. It's the third game in a row that they don't win because they had 2 ties. But the question is it a real crisis or not? Let's remember they did not win their 2 last games in the Bundesliga, but that's after they secured the title.
We said that they're playing for fun.
So yes, when you play for fun, you may lose. And the 1-0 result in Manchester last week, not a bad result because that means they go back and deciding the tie in the Champions League in their own Allianz Arena. So is it a crisis or just cooling off? We will not have to wait a lot of time for the answers because on Wednesday,
Jonathan,
Bayern Munich against Manchester United in the Allianz Arena.
Even when they are playing the way that they're playing, they're better than some groups that we know here. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Lucy.
And we're going out for a small break, and we're moving afterwards to the Daily Debate. Don't go anywhere.